Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. I am Maria Casillas. Another week, another episode. Unfortunately, it's one more that Cody's not able to join me in, but hopefully by next week he will be back. So we have that to look forward to. In the meantime, I want to talk to you today about the importance of pursuing new ideas. Now, I technically should be using some air quotes around the word new because let's get real, how many new ideas are out there? Most of them are just kind of recycled in one way or another. But I do want to talk about that today with you. Before jumping into that, I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you who is tuned in week after week. We call you our every weekers and we appreciate you. And I also want to remind you that we have been really enjoying all of the new reviews that you guys are putting out there for us. And we encourage you to continue to do that. That's how we know what is resonating with you in the podcast and what we could change to make it even more beneficial for you. All right. But now, all that's out of the way. Let's talk about this whole idea of new ideas. I know that sometimes we get these ideas in our minds and they're just maybe a little bit different than what we're used to or different than what other people say that we should be doing out there. And so sometimes it's hard to actually pursue some of those and really decide, you know what, this is a good idea. I know one of the ways that we can determine if something is good is to have social proof. But this conundrum that I personally have felt, and I'm wondering if any of you have also experienced this recently, is that if it's a new idea, and there is no social proof around it, then how do you go and get the social proof to show that, yes, it actually is beneficial for people and therefore it's something that should be pursued? So I recently had something happen and I just wanted to share it with you because it really kind of ties into what our guest David was talking about last week when he was saying that, you know, he had to find time, that he had to find a way to do the things in his business that he was talented at, good at, and had time for. And as you may have heard that in that episode, I really resonated with some of that because my life looks a little different than the typical coach's life might look. And I've had to figure out ways to do the things that I'm really called to do and feel like I'm good at doing, but in a way that oftentimes seems kind of unconventional. So one such thing is teaching. Now, as if you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, you know that I basically stay home with my kids and that I'm homeschooling the two little ones. What that has done for me is open up just this whole different view of the world. Like I was not necessarily meant to be a teacher, although I think that there's a lot of teaching that we do in our coaching practices. But when I started to teach my kids, I started to play around with different formats of teaching them. And I ended up landing on one that's called classical. And it's very different than what's out in the world today, but very similar to what used to be like millennia ago. And it's basically this idea that you go back to the original statements, different documents, and you read original works of art and then learn from some of that rather than just looking at textbooks that have already taken the pieces that they find interesting and important out of the original text and using those books. So anyway, all of that is just to say that it's been eye-opening for me, and it has allowed me to work differently with a lot of my clients because I'm definitely taking more of that classical approach when it comes to things with them. Now you might be thinking, well, really, are you teaching your clients a whole lot? Or are you coaching them through stuff? Well, when I'm teaching them something, when I want there to be something for them to actually learn, whether it's new vocabulary around, EOBs, for example, a lot of people don't actually know what some of the terminology is around a lot of that. And so we are teaching our clients in a way. When I am recognizing that this is kind of new, and I don't really have the social proof to show that it's working, it can be really uneasy sometimes to actually bring this up. And I'm actually, I think, probably going on a limb and bringing that up to you guys, because it's not something that, like I said, I've heard out in the coaching arena, and I don't have any proof that it actually works for people, other than the fact that those who I'm using this approach with are actually benefiting from it. And that's the point of what I want to talk to you today about. There's this, sometimes when we're not sure how something's going to work out, we're hesitant, or at least I can be hesitant to actually give it a try. And I most recently had this opportunity to actually teach middle schoolers. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because this thing that I needed to teach is personal finance. And when the person kind of came to me and said, we would like somebody who can teach career counseling, I thought, well, I actually feel kind of called to help this cause. And I mean, I have been teaching not just my own kids, but last year I volunteered and taught like the English language, essentials of English language, to some other kids. And so I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I've gotten a little bit of that under my belt, so I can do it. I have a little bit of the talent in that area of helping kids understand something that's a little bit more difficult to understand. So, I checked that box that David was talking about. And do I have time for it? I mean, I could make time, especially if I did that while my other kids were part of that community and, they were learning something else. So it checked that box, but it wasn't something I was passionate about or interested in. I knew I could do it, but I didn't really think I wanted to do it. And yet I felt called to be part of this whole mission. And so after hearing from this director, what are some of the things she was willing to do? What is she looking for? What is she hoping for somebody to sign up on? I told her that I really appreciated everything that she had said, and that I really wanted to be part of her entire vision. I would even be willing to teach. But if she ever opened a spot for personal finance, that's what I wanted to do, not career counseling. And she said, oh, well, I'm happy to open up personal finance for you if that's what you want to teach. And I thought, okay, let's go for it. So she started asking me what curriculum I was going to use. And I started looking around, and I thought, you know what? I have a choice to make. I can either reinvent the wheel, which sounded horrible, or I can find something and curate that. But that also sounded horrible. And the reason that sounded horrible is because everything that I was finding out there, all of the things that would be typical personal finance curricula for kids, was stuff that I'd seen over and over and over. And it didn't include some of the stuff that I have found to be so very important when it comes to coaching our clients. And if you've listened to this for any amount of time, you know that that's like the psychology of money that we hear a lot about. It's how our thoughts and emotions and behaviors are all very much interconnected, and how it affects the way that we behave with money. That's very important to me. And it's even more important than just drizzling it into something. I actually want it to be a foundation for any teachings that I give to middle schoolers, high schoolers, my own children, and my clients as well. And so I decided that I was going to do a hybrid. Rather than completely reinventing the wheel, I would curate some content, but I wanted to do it just as an outline form so that I could then build in the things that I believed to be very, very important. Now, I'm going to be fully honest with you guys. I am all of 3 weeks into this curriculum. And so I don't really have a whole lot of social proof. I don't have anything that says this is a fantastic curriculum and I'm excited to get it out there. But I can tell you one thing, and this happened to me just this last week. And it was one of those, validation points, pat on the back, whatever you want to call it. But the director pulled me aside. Her son is in my class, and she had told me, I just wanted to let you know that without you knowing, I enrolled him into your personal finance class and then another personal finance class in a different community. She said, I admittedly had done that before I knew yours was coming. And when I decided to put him into yours, I just kept him in the other one because it felt like I had already signed up and I was just going to commit to that. So she ultimately has been making her kid go to 2 personal finance classes this past few weeks, excuse me. And I find that kind of funny because most kids are like, oh my gosh, I have to go to 1. Now this poor kid has to go to 2. But I digress. So she pulled me aside this last week and she said, I just want to let you know that he has absolutely been loving your class and has been begging to have me remove him from the other one. Now, you guys, this is one student out of many, and I understand that, but it was a little bit of validation because we haven't even talked about the money side yet. I mean, we have. I've integrated it into the stuff that we've talked about, but we haven't gotten into all of the typical things that you would see in a curriculum, like how to deal with checking accounts and savings accounts and understanding pay stubs and, all of the things that are like that. Now, granted, those things are coming in my curriculum, but they were not the things that I led with. And I led instead with things that I felt were more important, more foundationally important to their understanding of how things work. And I have been taking some risks for sure. I mean, I've gone in and done some things like, used, what's the right word here? I have used total blank, bite and brain. Okay. I mean, I've been taking some risks here. I've used things like optical illusions to really get the kids start thinking about what's going on in their brain when they're looking at something. And that's going to then transfer to what is happening when they're making some of the decisions around their finances. So I don't know that it's risky in the sense that these kids are going to be harmed or anything like that, but it definitely is unconventional. And when you try something that's unconventional, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how well received it's going to be. And this still may be a very floppish event. Like I may end up falling flat on my face with it, but I don't think I will. And I think part of the reason is because I'm kind of gearing this and creating it according to what the kids need. So each week I go in and I have an outline of what I want to do, but then I'm able to sit down and really just kind of have conversations with them and grab from them what it is that's speaking to them, if you will. And that's how I'm creating this curriculum moving forward. And so all of that is just to let you guys know, if there's something that's brewing in your mind, in your heart, in your soul that says, I want to try this, but it's a quote unquote new idea and I just don't have the social proof that it's going to work, that's okay. Try it anyway, especially if you have the passion for it and the time for it. If you have a talent for it, try it. The worst thing that could happen is that you spend some time figuring out that it didn't work. But I decided rather than creating this entire curriculum and then testing it out, that I would just test it out along the way. And so I'm getting paid to create a curriculum rather than doing it all ahead of time. And so I just wanted to remind each and every one of you as you are going through the stuff in your business. Now, you may not be called to teach. That's just happens to be one of the skills or talents that I've had to develop over the last few years, given my circumstances. But you may have something different. You may have connections in the corporate world where you're like, I'm going to make sure that I bring personal finance to the corporate world and I'm going to do it with my own spin. And there are ways to get paid to create that as well. So I just want you to try it, do something new, allow yourself to venture out, make mistakes, maybe even fall flat on your face. Who knows? I might be doing the same thing, but that's the only way that any new ideas become solid ideas. And that's how we get the social proof. So I have social proof from one student over the course of 3 weeks. And that's all I have from actual social proof. But you know what? It's going to build from there. I know that it is. Each student who sits in my class for just observing it loves it and comes back the next week. And so I know that there's something that's missing out there, and I'm happy to solve that and provide a solution for that problem. And I know that each and every one of you with that entrepreneurial spirit that you have also know that there are certain problems that only your talents and your time and your passions will be able to actually solve for those people. So today I encourage you to go out and try it. I also encourage you to jump into our Facebook and let us know there what you're trying. Maybe bounce some ideas off of us. We'd be excited to help you in there. If you haven't heard the name of that group, and we'll see if I get it right because I always mess this up on this show, is the Financial Coaches Community by New Money Habits. It's on Facebook. It's free to join. Answer a couple questions and we will bring you right into the fold. And then you will have an opportunity to connect with other fantastic coaches there. You guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. It's been a pleasure being here with you. I look forward to joining you next week. hopefully with Cody back for another episode of the Financial Coaches Podcast. Until then, have a great week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our hosts by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, happy coaching. Music provided by Summer School.